A satellite passes over Tehran and captures something the Iranian government does not want the world to see. On the military ramp at Mehrabad, there are craters where 17 aircraft used to sit. Not damaged aircraft, not aircraft moved for safety. Craters. This was TAB-1, Tactical Air Base 1, the home of Iran's F-14 Tomcat fleet, the last operational Tomcats left on the planet. So how does a country lose the ability to defend its own skies in a matter of weeks? This wasn't some remote base near a contested border. This sat inside Tehran, next to the same airport millions of ordinary Iranians used to fly through every single year. Mehrabad has been running as a civilian airport since 1938. For decades, it was Tehran's main international gateway, the place where Iranian families flew out for vacations and businessmen flew in for meetings. But right next to that civilian terminal sits a separate operation entirely, TAB-1. And TAB-1 matters more to the Iranian government than every runway of passenger traffic combined. What did TAB-1 actually hold? Iran's F-14 Tomcat fleet? The same aircraft the US Navy retired back in 2006. Iran bought these jets from the United States before the 1979 revolution, back when the Shah was still in power and Washington and Tehran were allies. Then the revolution happened, the relationship collapsed, and Iran got left holding a fleet of American fighter jets with no American support, no spare parts contracts, and no factory willing to keep the line running. That's the part that makes these aircraft remarkable. Iran has kept F-14 Achi flying for over 4 decades with zero manufacturer support. Mechanics in Tehran learned to cannibalize parts from other Tomcats just to keep a handful airworthy, pulling a working part off one broken jet to fix another. It is a maintenance operation built entirely out of necessity, and TAB-1 is where that entire operation lived. Beyond the Tomcats, TAB-1 also housed COD's Aerospace Industries, the IRGC's drone production line. This wasn't buried in some hidden desert facility. It operated right on the airfield, building attack drones a few hundred yards from commercial jets loading passengers for flights to Istanbul or Dubai. Then there's Pars Aviation Services Company, PASC for short. This is the hangar complex where Iran maintained and modified its military aircraft, the closest thing the country had to a repair depot for its air force. Lose PASC, and every surviving aircraft loses its path back into the sky. And there's one more layer to this. Aircraft used by senior regime figures move through this base. That gives TAB-1 a command and control value that goes past hardware, past jets and drones and hangars. It means this single location touched Iran's fighter fleet, its drone program, and its leadership mobility all at once, which is exactly why TAB-1 was the single point of failure for Iranian air power over its own capital. Everyone inside Tehran's defense structure understood that. A base holding the country's last Tomcats, its drone factory, and its leadership aircraft, all inside one perimeter fence in the middle of the capital. That single point of failure is exactly where the campaign started. March 3, 2026. The first Israeli strike hits Mehrabad, and the campaign that would gut Iranian air power begins. The goal on day 1 isn't to level the airport. It's narrower than that and more surgical. Blind the base, ground anything that could get airborne and contest the airspace over Tehran. You don't need to destroy an airfield to make it useless. You just need to make sure nothing capable of fighting can leave the ground. 4 days later, on March 7th, US and Israeli strikes come back and hit the military side hard. At least 17 aircraft get destroyed on the ground, parked in neat rows on the ramp where satellite cameras would later photograph nothing but craters. Among them, an aircraft tied to former Supreme Leader Khamenei, a jet meant to move the most protected man in the country, sitting on the same tarmac as everything else, and just as vulnerable. Here's the tactical logic, and it's not complicated. An aircraft destroyed on the ramp never gets the chance to take off. No dogfight, no missile exchange, no risk to the pilots doing the shooting. You're not fighting the Iranian Air Force in the sky. You're erasing it before it leaves the ground, and that's cheaper and safer than any air-to-air engagement could ever be. 2 days after that, March 8th and 9th, the strikes shift target. PASC, the maintenance hangar complex, gets leveled along with an adjacent building. This is the facility that kept Iran's aircraft flying for 4 decades without a single spare part from the manufacturer. Now it's gone. Think about why that matters as much as the jets themselves. An air force that loses its aircraft on the ramp has taken a hit, but an air force that loses its ability to repair anything grounds itself over time, with or without another strike. Every scratch becomes permanent. Every mechanical issue becomes a death sentence for that airframe. Pask wasn't just a hangar. It was the only thing standing between a damaged aircraft and a museum piece. Then the strikes turned to Qad's Aerospace Industries, hitting the drone production line directly. Iran had leaned on this program to offset a manned fleet that was already shrinking before 2026 started. Every drone lost on a battlefield somewhere needed a replacement coming off that line. Now the line itself is a target, and the replacement pipeline for Iran's drone war takes damage right alongside its Tomcats. Civilian flights out of Mehrabad get suspended indefinitely. That's not incidental. The airport and TAB-1 share a runway system, so when the military side becomes a target, the civilian side stops moving too. Ordinary Iranians who use this airport every year to fly out for business or family or vacation are grounded, not because anyone targeted them, but because the runway they need sits inside a war zone now. But the campaign wasn't finished, it just changed targets. Through March and into April, the target list shifts again. This time, it's the runways themselves. Destroying an aircraft on the ground kills one airframe. Cratering a runway kills every aircraft that depends on it, whether that aircraft survived the earlier strikes or not. A Tomcat sitting untouched in a hangar is worthless if there's no strip of concrete left for it to take off from. So the strikes start landing on specific points along the runway surface. Not random damage, but precise craters placed exactly where repair crews would have the hardest time filling them back in. The math behind this is simple and brutal. A runway hit in the wrong spot near a drainage line or a load-bearing section can take weeks to repair properly, even for a country with unlimited construction crews and zero interference. Iran had neither. Every patch job gets slowed by the fact that strikes keep coming back, and every temporary fix risks getting hit again before it's even cured. That's the compounding effect nobody in Tehran's defense structure could get around. Whatever aircraft survived the ramp strikes, whatever jet didn't get caught in a crater on March 7th, now had nowhere to go. No runway to launch from, no strip long enough or clean enough to land on safely if it did somehow get airborne. An Air Force doesn't need every plane destroyed to be finished. It just needs nowhere left to fly from. Satellite imagery through the rest of the campaign confirms exactly this picture. Hangars leveled where Pask used to stand. Runway sections cratered in patterns that show precision, not carpet bombing. And the military ramp, once lined with Tomcats and support aircraft, sitting empty of anything intact. No rows of jets, no signs of a repair effort keeping pace with the damage. Just craters, rubble, and open concrete where an Air Force used to live. Zoom out from Mehrabad itself, and the picture gets worse for Tehran. Tab 1 wasn't just home to the Tomcats and the drone line, it was part of the backbone of Iran's ability to scramble interceptors over its own capital. With that base crippled, Tehran's air defense picture collapses in a way that has nothing to do with missile batteries or radar coverage. You can have every ground-based system in the world watching the sky, but if you can't get a fighter into that sky, you're watching an intrusion you can't stop. And this is worth sitting with for a second, because of where it happened. This isn't some forward base out near a contested border, the kind of place that gets hit in every regional conflict and rebuilt within a news cycle. This is the capital, the seat of government, the place where Iran's leadership lives and works, and its primary airfield can no longer reliably put a single fighter into the air above it. By the time the strikes slowed down, the numbers told the story on their own. Start with the Tomcats because that number was already thin before the first missile hit. Iran went into 2026 with a handful of flyable F-14s. Some estimates put it at fewer than 20 aircraft still capable of getting off the ground, out of roughly 80 originally purchased back in the 1970s. Whatever got destroyed on that ramp on March the 7th didn't come out of some deep reserve. It came out of a fleet that was already running on fumes. And here's the problem Iran can't engineer its way around. There's no replacement pipeline for a jet like this anymore. Grumman, the company that built the F-14, doesn't exist. It merged into Northrop Grumman back in 1994. And Northrop Grumman doesn't build Tomcat parts, doesn't stock Tomcat parts, and has no interest in supporting an aircraft the U.S. Navy retired 2 decades ago. No other Air Force on Earth flies the F-14, so there's no ally to call, no black market fleet to strip for parts, no factory anywhere that can produce a single replacement airframe. Every Tomcat lost at Mehrabad is permanent. Iran's fleet only gets smaller from here. That's what makes the Payasi strike so damaging beyond the moment it happened. Even the aircraft that survived March 7th, the ones that weren't sitting in the wrong spot on the ramp, now feed into a repair pipeline that's mostly rubble. A hydraulic leak that used to get fixed in a week now takes months, or never gets fixed at all. As we saw, PASC was the only thing keeping this fleet flying without factory support. Take it out and every surviving jet ages faster, flies less, and slips closer to being grounded permanently. Then there's the drone side, which was supposed to be the hedge against exactly this kind of loss. Qad's aerospace industries existed because Iran knew its manned fleet was shrinking and couldn't be replaced. So drones filled the gap, hit that production line, and the replacement pipeline for the program, built to compensate for the Tomcat problem, takes damage too. There's no backup for the backup. Put that all together, and the consequence isn't just military, it's leverage. A country that can't defend its own capital's airspace walks into every future negotiation from a weaker position because everyone at that table knows it. Diplomacy backed by force works differently than diplomacy backed by craters. Mehrabad was never just an airport. It was the one place where every weakness in Iran's air power sat inside a single fence line, impossible to hide once the strike started. That's the story satellite images can't fully capture, but the aftermath makes plain. The base that once launched Iran's most capable fighters over its own capital now sits cratered, hangars flattened, ramp empty, and no repair schedule on Earth brings back an F-14 fleet the country can no longer replace. On December 5th, 2011, an American stealth drone went down over Iran. Iranian forces didn't fire a missile. They jammed its brain and tricked it into landing intact inside enemy territory. That aircraft was the RQ-170 Sentinel, built by Skunk Works. It was supposed to be invisible. 14 years later, Skunk Works has built something that makes the RQ-170 look like a toy. The RQ-170 wasn't a prototype, and it was already operational when it went down. Before the loss, the Central Intelligence Agency had used it over Pakistan during the raid that killed Osama bin Laden. It carried no weapons because its only payload was silence. Its designers built it to evade radar and other surveillance systems, and it had done so successfully for years before that December night. Iranian forces near Kashmir picked it up as it crossed into northeastern airspace, and they tracked it for miles before deciding to act. They didn't shoot it down, and instead they jammed its command link while spoofing its GPS coordinates. The drone believed it was landing at its home base, and it touched down on Iranian soil almost completely intact. State television broadcast images of the captured aircraft within days. The Iranians displayed it on television, and within months they were reverse engineering it. Within 3 years, Iran claimed to have test-flown a domestically built copy. The design features, the radar-absorbing materials, and the control architecture were all laid bare for engineers in Tehran. This was more than an intelligence victory. It was a demonstration of how patience, reverse engineering, and one captured airframe can dismantle an entire doctrine of low observable technology that the United States had spent decades refining. For Skunk Works, the loss was devastating. The RQ-170 represented years of classified engineering and operational testing. To see it sitting in a hangar under Iranian flags forced a question that would drive the next decade of black project development inside the most secretive division at Lockheed Martin. If a stealth drone could be detected and captured without a shot fired, then stealth itself needed to be redefined from the ground up. The capture exposed a truth the Pentagon had preferred to ignore. Stealth was never absolute. It was a set of design choices optimized for specific threats, and Iran had found the gaps between them. Electronic emissions, data link signatures, and thermal output were all vulnerabilities that radar cross-section alone couldn't address, no matter how advanced the shaping or the absorbing coatings had become. The Pentagon's response wasn't to abandon stealth, it was to expand it. Engineers realized that reducing radar visibility was no longer enough when an adversary could exploit every other signature the aircraft produced. The new challenge was to build a platform that disappeared across multiple detection methods simultaneously. This is where the concept of multispectral stealth enters the picture. Traditional stealth attacks the electromagnetic spectrum in the bands used by fire control radars, primarily X-band and Ku-band. That approach works against missile guidance systems, but it leaves other spectrums wide open. And those gaps are where the real danger lives. Iran had proven this in 2011. Their electronic warfare operators didn't need to break the RQ-170's radar evasion to bring it down. They attacked its brain instead. The lesson was stark. If you want to survive over contested airspace, you need to vanish from radar, from infrared sensors, from electronic surveillance, and from visual detection all at the same time. In September 2025, Lockheed Martin Skunk Works did something unusual. They unveiled a new stealth drone in public. The aircraft was called Vectis, a Group 5 collaborative combat aircraft designed to operate as an unmanned wingman alongside the F-35, the F-22, and future fighter programs. First flight is targeted for 2027, and the program is self-funded by Lockheed, which means the company is betting its own money on a market the Air Force hasn't yet fully committed to. O.J. Sanchez, the vice president and general manager of Skunk Works, made the announcement. He said the ability to reach this concept didn't happen overnight. That statement carries weight because Skunk Works doesn't typically reveal its black projects to the public. The F-117, the F-22, and the RQ-170 all emerged from secrecy only after they were already flying or operational. The public unveiling of Vectis raises an immediate question. If this is what they're willing to show, then something far more advanced remains hidden behind the curtain. Vectis is a tactical platform. It's designed for air-to-air combat support, sensor sharing, and loyal wingman duties. It isn't a deep penetration strategic reconnaissance asset, and it doesn't replace the need for a high-altitude, long-endurance drone that can loiter over denied territory for days without being detected. That gap is obvious, and it's a gap that Skunk Works has historically been hired to fill. In November 2023, more than a year and a half before Vectis was ever revealed, a defense industry podcast dropped a claim that rippled through the aviation press. Vago Meridian, the editor-in-chief and host of the Defense and Aerospace Report, stated that a classified Skunk Works reconnaissance aircraft had already been delivered to the United States Air Force. He described it as exceeding the RQ-180 in capability, referring to the rumored Northrop Grumman high-altitude stealth drone that has never been officially acknowledged. Meridian said the program had been rescoped, not canceled. The capability requirements were so ambitious that the design had to be revised before the next block of aircraft could move forward. This is the language of a program that already exists in hardware, not on a drawing board. The RQ-180, if real, is understood to be a replacement for the U-2 Dragon Lady and the retired RQ-4 Global Hawk. A Skunk Works competitor would need to outperform it by a wide margin to justify continued Air Force investment. The description fits a strategic intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance platform. Operating at high altitude with long endurance and extreme stealth is exactly what the Pentagon needs to monitor mobile missile launchers and underground facilities in denied airspace. If the reports are accurate, airframes already exist. The only question is what makes them so much more capable than anything that came before. Conventional stealth is radar-centric. Angled airframes, radar-absorbent coatings, and internal weapons bays all work together to scatter or trap the electromagnetic waves used by fire control radars in X-band and Ku-band. This is the stealth the world understands. It's the stealth that let the F-117 strike Baghdad in 1991 and the B-2 cross continents without detection. But it's also the stealth that the RQ-170 relied on, and it wasn't enough. Modern air defense doesn't rely solely on those bands. VHF and UHF radars use longer wavelengths that interact differently with stealth shaping. Where X-band waves bounce off carefully angled surfaces, longer waves can wrap around edges and create detectable returns. These systems can't guide missiles with precision on their own, but they can cue other sensors to the general location of a stealth aircraft. That's exactly the vulnerability Iran's layered network was built to exploit. Worse, infrared search and track systems don't use radar at all. They're passive sensors that detect the heat radiating from an aircraft's engines and exhaust. Every stealth drone in the American inventory produces a thermal signature that an IRST system can see from miles away. Multispectral stealth attacks all three problems at once. It reduces radar cross-section across multiple bands, suppresses infrared emissions through advanced engine design and exhaust cooling, and replaces vulnerable data links with low probability of intercept communications that can't be jammed or spoofed. Academic literature from 2025 and 2026 documents breakthroughs in dual-band radar and infrared stealth materials. The science is real. The question is whether Skunk Works has already deployed it. Iran's air defense is built around two major systems. The first is the Russian S-300PMU-2, a long-range surface-to-air missile battery with advanced tracking radar and multiple engagement channels. The second is the indigenous Bavar 373, unveiled in 2019 and developed after years of studying foreign systems, including the one that fell into Iranian hands in 2011. Iran claims the Bavar 373 can detect and track fifth-generation stealth fighters at ranges up to 450 kilometers. No independent source has verified that claim. Beyond these long-range weapons, Iran has fielded the Cobra Phi-8 radar and other systems to create a dense, overlapping network around critical sites. The logic is simple. Even if a single radar can't lock onto a stealth target, the combined coverage of multiple bands and multiple platforms increases the chance that something will produce a return, a heat signature, or an electronic emission that gives the game away. Iran learned from the RQ-170. They learned that American stealth is formidable, but not perfect, and they have spent 14 years building a trap specifically designed to catch the next drone that crosses their border. The catch is that the next drone may not be using any kind of stealth they recognize. Now put the pieces together. A classified Skunk Works reconnaissance program has been reported as already delivered, with capability requirements so ambitious they forced a redesign. A publicly unveiled tactical drone leaves a glaring gap in strategic deep penetration surveillance, and a scientific foundation of dual-band radar and infrared stealth materials has been documented in peer-reviewed literature. The evidence points to one conclusion. Skunk Works has likely built a high-altitude, long-endurance platform that defeats Iran's layered network across every spectrum it uses. It would operate above the engagement ceiling of most surface-to-air missiles, with a radar cross-section reduced across VHF through X-band, an infrared signature suppressed below the threshold of IRST detection, and electronic emissions so minimal that jamming becomes nearly impossible. The March 2026 emergency landing of a secret American stealth drone at Larissa Air Base in Greece adds context. That aircraft was the rumored RQ-180, a Northrop Grumman platform, not a Skunk Works product, but its presence near contested airspace proves that classified hail stealth drones are already operating in the region. The United States isn't waiting for 2027. It needs persistent intelligence over Iran now, and the conflict raging through 2026 has made that need urgent. If the 2023 reports are accurate, Skunk Works has already delivered this aircraft to the Air Force. That means somewhere over the Middle East, right now, there may be a drone that Iran's billion-dollar air defense network can't see, can't track, and can't shoot down. The strategic impact is severe. Tehran has spent decades and billions building a wall, and the wall may be looking at empty sky. The era of single-spectrum stealth is ending. Tomorrow belongs to platforms that disappear across every detection method an adversary can build. Skunk Works has done this before. Back in 1991, the F-117 redefined night attack. The F-22 redefined air superiority. Even the RQ-170 proved that secret drones can be caught. Each time, Skunk Works learned, adapted, and pushed what invisible means. If the rumors are true, the next step is an aircraft that evades more than radar. It vanishes from infrared sensors, electronic surveillance, and low-frequency detection simultaneously. The consequences for Iran are severe. Billions spent on air defense, neutralized by an aircraft they can't see, can't hear, and can't track. The consequences for global air power are broader. Once multi-spectral stealth becomes operational, the balance of reconnaissance shifts permanently. When the adversary doesn't even know it's been watched, the strategic advantage becomes total. The answer may already be flying, and it didn't come from a factory line anyone has seen. Deep underground, behind dozens of meters of solid rock, Iranian scientists believed they'd found the perfect shield. The logic seems sound. No air force in the world could reach them down there. But here's what they got wrong. The deeper you bury a nuclear program, the more precisely the US military has learned to target it. What we're going to show you is the weapon system built specifically to solve that problem, and why no bunker Iran can realistically build or operate will keep its program safe. The bunker strategy: why Iran went underground. Iran didn't decide to go underground on a whim. It watched what happened to Saddam Hussein's nuclear ambitions after the Israeli strike on Osirak in 1981. And it watched what happened to Libya's Gaddafi after he gave up his weapons program and was removed anyway. The lesson Iran took from both of those situations was simple. If you want a nuclear program to survive, you can't leave it sitting on the surface where anyone with a GPS coordinate and a large enough bomb can reach it. So Iran started digging. The most well-known result of that strategy is Fordow. It sits near the city of Qom, carved into the rock of a mountain rather than simply buried beneath flat ground. The Iranians chose that site deliberately. The mountain itself adds protection that poured concrete alone can't replicate. At reported depths of around 80 to 90 meters below the surface, the facility was designed from the start with one specific threat in mind: American and Israeli air power. The thinking behind it is straightforward physics. The deeper a structure sits, the more material a warhead has to pass through before it reaches anything worth destroying. At 80 meters of rock and reinforced concrete, you're outside the reach of almost every conventional airdrop weapon ever built. Iran's engineers knew the specifications of the munitions that existed when Fordow was being constructed, and they built accordingly. But depth wasn't the only layer of the strategy. Iran deliberately spread its nuclear work across multiple sites: Natanz for centrifuge operations, Arak for a heavy water reactor, Isfahan for uranium conversion, and Fordow for the enrichment work considered most sensitive. The logic of dispersal is that any adversary planning a strike has to hit all of them simultaneously, or accept that whatever they don't hit will survive and continue operating. Miss one, and the program lives. There's also the political dimension to dispersal. Striking a single facility can be framed as a limited, targeted operation. Striking 6 or 8 sites scattered across a country the size of Iran starts to look like a war, and that calculus has historically made Western governments hesitant to act. For years, that combination, depth plus dispersal plus political complexity, gave Iran genuine protection. Defense analysts in Washington and Tel Aviv debated openly whether Fordow was simply out of reach. Some concluded it was. The Iranians were following that debate closely, and what they heard gave them confidence the strategy was working. What they didn't fully account for was that the US military was following the same debate, drawing the opposite conclusion, and quietly funding the answer. That answer didn't come from diplomacy. It came from a weapons program that had been running in the background for years, built around a single question. What does it take to reach a target that conventional munitions simply cannot touch? The weapons built to answer the bunker, the GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrator, doesn't have a subtle name, and it wasn't designed for subtle work. It weighs 30,000 pounds. To put that in context, that's roughly the weight of 2 full-grown African elephants, packed into a single weapon and dropped from altitude at high speed. The US Air Force developed it for one purpose: reaching targets that nothing else in the arsenal could touch. The way it does it comes down to engineering that looks almost crude until you understand the physics. The outer casing is hardened steel, thick enough to survive the violent deceleration of punching through rock and reinforced concrete without the weapon breaking apart before it reaches its target depth. Inside, a delayed fuse gives the warhead time to travel down through the layers of material before it fires. The result is a weapon that can penetrate more than 60 meters of reinforced concrete and considerably more in softer ground before the 5,300-pound explosive fill detonates in whatever space it's reached. That number matters 60 meters of reinforced concrete is a different problem than 60 meters of mountain rock, and the distinction is worth holding on to because it becomes important when we get to Fordow specifically. The only aircraft in the U.S. inventory capable of carrying the MOP is the B-2 Spirit, and it carries 2 of them. That's not a limitation of the aircraft so much as a reflection of how big the weapon actually is. The B-2's bomb bay was modified specifically to accommodate the MOP, meaning the Air Force committed real money and engineering time to making this delivery possible. You don't do that for a contingency plan. You do that because someone made a decision that this capability needed to exist and be ready. The MOP didn't appear from nowhere. It was preceded by the GBU-28, which became famous during the Gulf War in 1991. A 5,000-pound weapon that could punch through about 6 meters of concrete. At the time, that was enough to threaten the bunkers Saddam Hussein was using. But as Iran and North Korea watched that conflict and started building their own underground infrastructure, they built deeper. The GBU-28 stopped being a credible threat to the facilities they were constructing. The gap between what the U.S. could deliver and what adversaries were burying kept widening through the 1990s and into the 2000s. The MOP program was the direct institutional response to that gap. Congressional documents from the mid-2000s name Iran and North Korea explicitly as the threat scenarios driving the weapons development. The U.S. government wasn't being subtle about what this was for. The MOP reached operational status around 2011, and the Air Force has continued refining it since. At least 2 upgrade programs have improved its guidance systems and fusing to address specific feedback about penetration, performance against particular soil and rock compositions. That last detail is worth sitting with. The upgrades weren't generic improvements. They were responses to specific target characteristics, which means U.S. planners have been modeling Fordow and facilities like it in enough detail to identify exactly what adjustments the weapon needed to defeat them. The MOP wasn't just built to reach underground facilities in general. It was progressively refined to reach the specific ones that matter most. Penetration depth alone, though, is only part of the equation. Getting a 30,000-pound bomb to the right coordinate over defended territory without being shot down before it releases, that's a separate problem entirely, and it required a separate solution. Delivery, precision, and the platforms that make it work. The B-2 Spirit is the reason any of this works. Without a platform that can carry the MOP into defended airspace and release it accurately, the weapon is just an engineering achievement sitting in a hangar. Stealth is what converts that engineering into an actual military option. The B-2's radar cross-section is roughly the size of a large bird, a product of its flying wing shape, radar-absorbent surface materials, and the careful internal routing of engine exhaust to reduce heat signatures. Iranian air defenses are built around radar. They need to detect, track, and engage an incoming aircraft in a sequence that takes time. The B-2 breaks that sequence at the first step. If the radar can't produce a reliable track, the missiles that depend on that track can't fire effectively. The aircraft reaches its release point, drops its payload, and exits before the defense system has resolved what it was looking at. Precision is the other half of that equation. The MOP uses a combination of GPS guidance and an inertial navigation system that runs independently in case GPS signals are jammed or degraded. Together, they put the weapon within a few meters of its target coordinate. And that accuracy is what makes sequential strikes possible. You can drop the first weapon into a specific entry tunnel, then drop the second through the hole the first one created, driving the destruction progressively deeper into the structure. That's not a theoretical concept. It's a documented strike methodology the Air Force calls re-attack, and it was specifically developed to address cases where a single pass isn't sufficient to guarantee destruction. But before any weapon leaves the aircraft, intelligence has to do its work. ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, is what tells planners where exactly to aim. Satellites, signals collection, and aerial reconnaissance over years of observation have produced detailed models of facilities like Fordow, where the access tunnels enter the mountain, where the ventilation shafts run, where the power infrastructure connects, and where the internal chambers sit relative to the surface above them. Dropping a weapon accurately onto a coordinate is simple. Knowing which coordinate to give it, the one that collapses the right tunnel or severs the right shaft, is the product of years of collection work. The weapon and the intelligence system feeding it are inseparable. Now factor in the B-21 Raider, which has entered operational service and carries the same heavy payload capability as the B-2. The B-21 was designed with lessons from decades of stealth operations folded into its architecture from the start, rather than retrofitted over time. Its manufacturing approach also means the Air Force can build more of them at lower cost, which changes the calculus around how many aircraft are available for a given mission. The B-2 fleet is small, 20 aircraft total, and not all of them are mission-ready at any given time. The B-21 is intended to grow that number considerably. More aircraft means more simultaneous strike packages, which matters directly for the dispersal problem Iran built its program around. The more sites you can hit at once, the less the dispersal strategy protects. Iran's engineers designed Fordow with the threat environment of the early 2000s in mind. The delivery systems flying today are a generation past what those engineers were modeling, and the generation coming next is further still. The physics problem Iran can't solve. Here's the constraint that no amount of concrete or political maneuvering can fix. The deeper you bury a facility, the harder it becomes to actually run one. Enrichment centrifuges are precision instruments. They spin at tens of thousands of rotations per minute and require stable power, stable temperature, and constant maintenance. The deeper underground you place them, the more complex and expensive the infrastructure keeping them alive becomes. Ventilation shafts to remove heat, power lines running down from the surface, supply tunnels wide enough to move equipment in and out. Every one of those systems is a structural dependency. Sever the ventilation and the facility overheats. Cut the power and the centrifuges stop. Collapse the access tunnel and no one gets in or out. The mountain protects the facility from above, but it also creates a set of choke points that a sequenced strike package is specifically designed to exploit. That's the part of bunker busting that rarely gets discussed. It isn't just about driving a warhead through the roof. A coordinated strike targets the tunnel entrances, the ventilation outlets, and the external power nodes in a sequence that leaves the interior intact but completely inoperable. A facility that survives a strike in that condition is still offline for months, possibly years, while the damage is assessed and the infrastructure rebuilt. From a military planning perspective, that outcome is nearly as good as destruction, because the time it buys is the point. Now apply that to Fordow specifically. The facility sits at a depth where the MOP's penetration capability against the rock composition of that mountain sits at the edge of what's publicly confirmed. And US officials have acknowledged that tension openly, then pointed to the upgrade programs that followed. What those upgrades addressed, based on what's been reported, was exactly that margin. The weapon was improved to close it. Iran's engineers face a dilemma with no clean exit. Push the facility deeper to stay ahead of penetration capability, and you make the operational problems worse. Longer ventilation shafts, longer supply lines, more surface infrastructure that satellites can image and strike packages can target. Stay at current depth and accept that the MOP, delivered accurately and sequentially, puts the facility at genuine risk. There's no depth that solves both problems at once, because the geological constraints that limit what a bomb can reach are the same constraints that limit what an engineering team can build and sustain. The bunker was always a bet that the weapons pointed at it would never quite catch up. That bet is no longer paying out. Where this leaves Iran, no underground facility survives indefinitely against an adversary with the will to use what it has built. That's not a political statement. It's the operational conclusion that falls out of the physics and the engineering on both sides. Iran's nuclear timeline has always been shaped by diplomacy, sanctions, and internal politics. What's changed is that the military dimension now adds a hard constraint that those other factors can't negotiate around. The US has the weapon, the platform, the intelligence picture, and a demonstrated willingness to act when it judges the moment right. Israel has struck Iranian assets before and has been explicit about what it will not accept. Both of those realities exist independent of whatever is happening at the negotiating table. The bunker gave Iran's program survivability it didn't have before. What it didn't give Iran was a permanent solution. It gave the program more time. And time, in this context, is running out faster than the mountain overhead would suggest. The bunker was Iran's answer to air power, and the MOP was America's answer to the bunker. That exchange is effectively over, and only one side came out ahead. In 2023, Iran unveiled a missile they claim reaches Tel Aviv in 30 seconds. They call it the Fateh 2, a hypersonic glide vehicle flying at Mach 15 with a warhead heavy enough to flatten a city block. Western analysts are not convinced it works the way Tehran says it does, but the claim alone has forced Israel to rush a missile interceptor that does not exist yet. What makes this threat so dangerous is not just the speed, it is the possibility that Iran has found a hole in the most advanced missile shield on Earth. Iran's missile program has always been a conversation about distance and survival. For decades, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has built an arsenal of ballistic weapons that can reach every corner of the Middle East. The Shahab 3 family, the Ahmad, the Khorram Shah, each one represents a step forward in range, accuracy, and payload. But none of them carried the label that makes defense planners wake up in the middle of the night. None of them were called hypersonic. That changed on a November morning in 2023. At an exhibition staged by the IRGC Aerospace Force, Iran pulled back the curtain on a weapon it called the Fateh 2. The name means conqueror in Persian, and the symbolism is not subtle. Iranian state media described it as a hypersonic glide vehicle with a range of 1,400 kilometers and a terminal velocity of Mach 15. That is roughly 18,000 kilometers per hour. At that speed, the 1,600-kilometer flight path from western Iran to Tel Aviv would take approximately 5 to 6 minutes of sustained travel. The 30 seconds framing that has circulated in headlines is sensationalized. Iranian sources themselves have cited closer to 400 seconds for the full engagement timeline. The Fateh 2 is not Iran's first attempt at this category of weapon. 7 months earlier, in June 2023, the IRGC unveiled the Fateh 1. That missile used a 2-stage propulsion system, a solid fuel booster, and a liquid fuel second stage with thrust vector control. Iran claimed it could maneuver inside and outside the atmosphere, slip past interceptors, and deliver a 350 to 450 kilogram warhead with precision. Western analysts looked at the design and saw something different. Fabian Hinz, a research fellow at the International Institute for Strategic Studies, assessed that the Fateh 1 was not a true hypersonic glide vehicle at all. It was a medium-range ballistic missile with a maneuverable re-entry vehicle, a MARV, capable of terminal phase adjustments, but not the sustained, low-altitude glide that defines a genuine HGV. The distinction matters. A traditional ballistic missile follows a predictable arc. It climbs, it coasts, it descends. Interceptors like Israel's Arrow 3 are designed to meet that arc in space, where the warhead is a cold, bright dot against a black background. A true hypersonic glide vehicle breaks that script. It separates from its booster high above the Earth, then drops into the upper atmosphere and skips along at Mach 15 like a stone across a pond. It can pull lateral maneuvers. It can change altitude. It does not follow the math that interceptors were built to solve. Iran says the Fateh 2 is that weapon. Western experts are skeptical. They point to the gap between a prototype at an exhibition and a combat-ready system tested under operational conditions. They note that true HGV technology requires materials and guidance systems that very few nations have mastered. China fields the DF-17, Russia deploys the Avangard, the United States is still refining its own programs. For Iran to jump into that club with an indigenous design would represent a leap that strains credulity. But credibility is not the only currency that matters in this game. The claim itself has already achieved an effect. Israel's defense posture, its procurement priorities, and its strategic partnerships are all reacting to the possibility that this weapon is real, or real enough. In a deterrence equation, perception can be as powerful as performance. If your adversary believes you hold a missile that can punch through their shield, they must spend money, shift forces, and rethink assumptions whether the missile works perfectly or not. That is exactly what is happening now. To understand why the Fateh 2 frightens defense planners, You have to look at what a hypersonic glide vehicle actually does. A conventional ballistic missile is a physics problem with one solution. Once the booster burns out, the warhead is a projectile on a fixed path. Yes, it moves incredibly fast. Yes, it is hard to hit. But its trajectory is governed by gravity and initial velocity, which means it can be tracked, predicted, and intercepted by a system with enough radar coverage and the right intercept geometry. That is the entire theory behind Israel's Arrow program. You find the warhead early, you compute where it will be, and you throw a smaller, faster projectile into its path. A hypersonic glide vehicle breaks that theory. After separation from its booster, an HEV dives back into the atmosphere and uses the air itself as a surface to generate lift. It is not coasting, it is flying. And because it is flying, it can turn, it can bank, it can pull maneuvers that bleed speed but create lateral displacement. The kind of displacement that makes an interceptor's targeting solution go stale in the final seconds before impact. Iran says the Fateh 2 operates in exactly this regime. The claimed specifications are sobering. Mach 15 in the terminal phase, a range of 1,400 to 1,500 kilometers, a warhead mass between 350 and 450 kilograms, and most critically, a road-mobile transporter-erector launcher platform that allows the system to hide in plain sight across Iran's vast interior, roll out onto a highway or a remote desert pad, fire, and relocate before any retaliatory strike can arrive. The IRGC has spent years building underground missile cities, vast subterranean complexes tunneled into mountains where launchers and fuel stores sit beyond the reach of conventional airstrikes. If the Fateh 2 is deployed from those facilities, it is not just fast, it is also survivable. But here is where the engineering gets complicated. At Mach 15, the air around the vehicle becomes a plasma. Heat-shielding materials must survive temperatures that would melt aluminum in seconds. Guidance systems must operate through a sheath of ionized gas that can block GPS signals and blind optical sensors. Aerodynamic control surfaces must respond with precision at speeds where the smallest miscalculation converts a glide into a tumble. These are not theoretical problems. They are the exact barriers that have slowed American, Russian, and Chinese hypersonic programs for decades. Iran claims to have solved them. Western analysts are not so sure. The War Zone and several defense publications have noted that the Fateh 1's design, a MARV with a small solid propellant motor and thrust vector control, is clever but limited. It can maneuver but only in the final phase of descent. It cannot sustain the flat, skipping trajectory of a true glide vehicle. The Fateh 2, if it genuinely shifts to an HGV design, would represent a qualitative step forward. But the step from a prototype on a showroom floor to a weapon that can reliably hit a target under combat conditions is one that many nations have tried and failed to make. The speed numbers deserve a closer look. Mach 15 is approximately 5.1 kilometers per second. A missile traveling at that velocity across the roughly 1,600 kilometer distance from Iran's western border to Tel Aviv would need a little over 5 minutes of pure flight time at that sustained speed. In reality, the ascent phase is slower, the glide phase is faster, and the terminal dive bleeds speed as the vehicle maneuvers. A total flight time in the range of 6 to 7 minutes is a more realistic baseline than the headline 30 seconds. That number appears to be compressed sensationalism. Iranian sources have themselves cited engagement timelines closer to 400 seconds. Even at 6 minutes, the timeline is brutal. Israel's warning network must detect the launch, classify the trajectory, cue interceptors, and achieve an exo-atmospheric kill, all before the warhead reaches Israeli airspace. That sequence is already tight against conventional ballistic missiles. Against a maneuvering glide vehicle, it becomes a problem that current interceptors were not designed to solve. Israel's missile defense architecture is the most layered and combat-tested system on the planet. At the bottom tier sits Iron Dome. It is built for rockets, artillery, and short-range missiles, weapons that fly low and slow within roughly 70 kilometers of the border. Iron Dome has intercepted thousands of projectiles since it entered service, and its success rate against single targets is close to 90%. But it is not designed for ballistic re-entry vehicles descending from space at Mach 15. Above Iron Dome sits David's Sling. Developed jointly with the United States, David's Sling handles medium-range threats, cruise missiles, drones, and ballistic missiles with ranges up to 300 kilometers. It uses the Stunner Interceptor, a two-stage hit-to-kill vehicle with its own radar seeker. David's Sling was upgraded shortly before the current conflict cycle with improvements to its radar discrimination and engagement software. But its envelope is still atmospheric. It is not built to chase a glide vehicle that spends most of its flight in the upper atmosphere or diving back down at angles that compress the engagement window to seconds. The top tier is Arrow. Arrow 2 handles ballistic missiles inside the atmosphere. Arrow 3 handles them outside. Arrow 3 is the crown jewel. It is an exo-atmospheric interceptor that carries its own sensor and can engage warheads hundreds of kilometers above the Earth, long before they begin their terminal descent. It has been tested against complex targets, sold to Germany in a €4 billion deal, and integrated with American early warning satellites. If a conventional ballistic missile leaves Iran, Arrow 3 is the system built to kill it in space. But Arrow 3 was designed for predictable arcs. The interceptor computes an intercept point based on the warhead's trajectory. If the warhead is gliding and maneuvering, that computation becomes a guess that must be refreshed constantly. The interceptor must carry enough fuel to correct its own path in real time, and it must survive the same plasma and thermal stresses that the glide vehicle itself faces. These are not minor software updates. They are fundamental hardware and aerodynamic challenges. That is why Israel is racing to field Arrow 4. Arrow 4 is the first Western interceptor specifically designed to engage hypersonic glide vehicles and maneuvering warheads. It is being developed jointly by Israel and the United States, with Israel Aerospace Industries and Boeing leading the engineering. According to IAI CEO Boaz Levy, the system is nearing operational readiness and will enter live trials in mid-2026. The design combines advanced agility, AI-enhanced targeting to discriminate decoys from warheads, and an interceptor that can maneuver in the same flight regime as the threats it is meant to kill. The timeline is tight. Iran has already claimed to use Fatah family missiles in combat. During the October 2024 strikes on Israel, researchers from the James Martin Center for Non-Proliferation Studies identified debris consistent with Fatah 1 components. Iran claimed hypersonic missile launches again during the June 2025 conflict and in the 2026 operations. The footage and claims from early 2026 remain contested. Some social media clips were flagged as AI generated by detection platforms, and independent verification has been limited. But the claims are doing their job regardless. Every time Iran announces a hypersonic strike, Israel must treat the threat as real until proven otherwise. That means firing expensive interceptors, scrambling fighter jets, and activating civil defense networks. It means wearing down the very system that Arrow 4 is meant to reinforce. And here is the cruelest math in missile defense. Interceptors cost more than the missiles they shoot down. A saturation attack with cheap ballistic missiles can exhaust an expensive shield. If some of those missiles are hypersonic and demand even more sophisticated interceptors, the cost asymmetry becomes staggering. The United States is not standing on the sidelines. Aegis destroyers in the Eastern Mediterranean carry the SM-6 interceptor, which has a limited capability against maneuvering targets at the edge of the atmosphere. But the SM-6 was designed primarily for cruise missiles and aircraft. Against a dedicated hypersonic glide vehicle, its effectiveness is uncertain. The U.S. Navy has spent billions on hypersonic defense research, yet no American system has intercepted a true HGV in combat. Israel is building the answer, but it is not ready yet. The Fatah 2 is not just an Iranian missile, it is a symptom of a larger shift in how nations threaten each other from a distance. Russia fields the Avangard. China fields the DF-17 and is testing even more advanced variants. The United States is chasing its own programs under the Navy's conventional prompt strike and the Army's long-range hypersonic weapon. Hypersonic technology is proliferating faster than the defense is meant to stop it, and Iran has apparently decided it wants a seat at that table. Whether it has earned that seat is the open question. The evidence for Iranian hypersonic combat use is fragmentary. Debris analysis from 2024 suggests Fatah 1 components may have been present in strikes on Israel, but Fatah 1 is not a true HGV. It is a maneuverable re-entry vehicle with limited exo-atmospheric agility. If Iran is now deploying the Fateh-2 with a genuine glide vehicle, the threat escalates qualitatively. The difference between an MARV that can wiggle in the final seconds and an HGV that can skip and bank across hundreds of kilometers is the difference between a hard target and a nearly impossible one. Israel's response tells us what the defense establishment believes. Arrow 4 is not a speculative science project. It is a crash program with American funding, Israeli engineering, and a deployment date measured in months rather than years. Germany's €4 billion purchase of Arrow 3 already demonstrated that Israeli missile defense has export value. Arrow 4, if it works, becomes the first Western system that can credibly advertise hypersonic kill capability. That is a strategic asset worth more than the missile itself. The broader lesson is about perception and posture. Iran does not need a perfect hypersonic missile to change the region's security calculus. It needs a credible one, a weapon that flies fast enough, maneuvers enough, and survives launch often enough to force Israel and the United States to treat every incoming threat as potentially unstoppable. That uncertainty drives spending, shifts doctrine, and creates political pressure to act before the threat matures. It is the same logic that governed nuclear deterrence during the Cold War. You did not need to fire the weapon. You only needed your adversary to believe you could. The Fateh-2 may or may not be the superweapon its name implies, but the fear it has created is already reshaping defenses, budgets, and alliances across the Middle East. Arrow 4 is coming, Iran's underground missile cities are expanding, and the race between the missile and the interceptor has only just begun. The Fateh-2 may or may not be the superweapon Iran claims, but the fear it created has already reshaped the region's defenses. Iran's secret base, buried deep within Pickaxe Mountain, is often called untouchable, a true fortress hidden beneath tons of solid rock. But even the deepest places have a weakness, a blind spot. What if the very earth meant to hide it now makes it a target? The US has weapons designed to crack the earth itself. The real fight isn't just hitting the base, it's finding a way to get inside. This flips our whole idea of underground war. So let's break down what we're actually talking about here. This isn't just some random bunker. The facility at Pickaxe Mountain is a massive complex buried deep underground for one reason: to be untouchable. The whole point is to hide their most sensitive projects so deep that no existing weapon can possibly reach them. We're talking about using hundreds of feet of solid rock as armor. Now, the US has a tool made for exactly this kind of problem. It's called the GBU-57, or the Massive Ordnance Penetrator. It's basically a 30,000-pound guided bomb that doesn't just explode on the surface. Instead, it's designed to smash through layers of earth and concrete, drilling its way down before it goes off. It is the king of all bunker busters. But here's the real question we're asking today. Is it enough? Has Iran finally managed to dig deeper than our bombs can reach? Have they built a fortress that even the biggest conventional bomb in the world can't crack? That's what we're digging into. We'll look at the real numbers, just how deep this base goes, what the GBU-57 can actually do, and what kind of next-generation weapons are on the drawing board to solve this exact problem. This is a hidden arms race, and the battlefield is hundreds of feet underground. So let's get specific. We're talking about a site dug into the Zagros Mountains, right near Iran's main nuclear facility at Natanz. For years, the world has been watching this spot. Satellite images have shown massive construction crews, heavy machinery, and most importantly, huge piles of excavated earth and rock. We call those spoil piles. By measuring the size of those piles, analysts can get a pretty good idea of just how big the underground complex is. And the numbers are staggering. This isn't just a basement. It's a full-blown subterranean city with a network of tunnels and huge chambers, all designed for one purpose: uranium enrichment. This is where they keep their advanced centrifuges, the machines that spin uranium gas at supersonic speeds to separate out the isotopes needed for either reactor fuel or a nuclear weapon. They've been moving this critical equipment from their older, more vulnerable facility at Natanz into this new mountain fortress. So, just how deep does it go? Based on analysis from groups like the James Martin Center for Non-Proliferation Studies, the main chambers are buried under an estimated 80 to 100 meters of solid rock and earth. Let's put that in perspective. That's between 260 and 330 feet. Think of a 30-story skyscraper, but laid on its side and buried under a mountain. This is a huge problem for any attacker. The GBU-57, our best bunker buster, is officially rated to penetrate about 60 meters, or 200 feet, of 5,000 PSY reinforced concrete. While that's incredibly impressive, it's not enough to reach a target buried 300 feet deep, especially under dense mountain rock, which can be even tougher to get through than concrete. Iran knows these numbers. They didn't just dig until they got tired. They specifically engineered this facility to be deeper than any publicly known conventional weapon can reach. They literally looked at the specs for the world's biggest bunker buster and then just kept digging. The entrances to the facility are also heavily fortified. There are 4 main entry points, each likely protected by reinforced blast doors and air defense systems. The idea is to make it impossible to get in through the front door, forcing any attack to come from the top down. But if your best weapon can't even scratch the ceiling, you've got a serious problem. Iran has essentially created a nuclear-safe deposit box. They've built a vault so secure that they believe they can run their most sensitive programs inside, completely safe from attack. This changes the entire strategic calculation. It's not just a challenge, it's a direct statement that their program is now, in their eyes, untouchable. So if the world's biggest conventional bomb can't do the job, what's the alternative? First, you have to understand just what the GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrator, or MOP, really is. This isn't just a bomb, it's a 30,000-pound, 20-foot-long spear made of a super-hardened steel alloy. It's not designed to just explode on the surface. It's designed to use its incredible weight and momentum to punch through the ground. Think of it like a giant metal dart thrown from 40,000 feet. It hits the ground at supersonic speed, and a special, super tough fuse is designed to survive that initial impact. It only detonates after the bomb has burrowed as deep as it can go, creating a massive explosion deep underground to maximize the shockwave. The problem is physics. Every foot of rock and dirt it travels through acts like a brake, slowing it down. The deeper the target, the more energy the bomb loses just getting there. At a certain point, it simply runs out of steam and stops before it can reach the target chamber. So what's the obvious solution? Hit the same spot twice. The first bomb is supposed to act like a can opener, blasting a crater and weakening the ground. The second bomb, aimed at the exact same hole, then theoretically has a clearer path to go even deeper. But this double-tap strategy has a huge flaw. The first explosion doesn't just vaporize the rock. It creates a massive crater filled with shattered, jumbled rubble. Trying to guide a second 30,000-pound bomb into that same moving, unstable hole from miles up is an unbelievable challenge. Even worse, that loose rubble can actually act like sand, cushioning the second bomb's impact and stopping it dead in its tracks, a phenomenon military planners call fratricide, where one weapon accidentally stops another. And then there's the delivery problem. The MOP is so enormous that only one aircraft in the entire US inventory can carry it, the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber, and it can only carry 2 at a time. This means you can't just send a wave of planes. You're talking about a small number of B-2s flying one of the most dangerous missions imaginable, deep into heavily defended Iranian airspace. They have to survive the trip in, drop their bombs with near-perfect precision, and then get out. Asking them to circle back for a second run on the exact same spot while every air defense system in the country is on high alert? That's bordering on a suicide mission. The hard truth is that the GBU-57, as it exists today, is likely at the very edge of its physical and strategic limits. It's an incredible piece of engineering, but Iran has literally built a problem that's 100 feet bigger than our solution. This has forced the Pentagon to go back to the drawing board, because when your best weapon isn't good enough, you have only one choice: build a better one. So the Pentagon is facing a physics problem. When you can't solve it with more brute force, you have to get smarter. You have to change the rules of the game. The most direct answer is building a new generation of the MOP itself, and that's exactly what's happening. The Air Force is already working on the next generation penetrator, a weapon designed from the ground up to defeat targets that the current GBU-57 can't. We don't know the exact details, but the concept is to redesign the entire weapon. It's not just about making it heavier, it's about making it more efficient. Think of a sleeker, more aerodynamic shape to reduce drag, a new tougher metal alloy for the casing that won't deform on impact, and most importantly, a smart fuse that can sense the layers of rock and concrete, detonating at the absolute perfect moment to maximize damage. But what if a bigger gravity bomb just isn't the answer, no matter how smart it is? That's where the conversation shifts from mass to velocity. The incredible destructive power of an object is based on its mass and its speed squared. Doubling the weight of a bomb doubles its energy, but doubling its speed quadruples its energy. This is the principle behind hypersonic weapons. Imagine a penetrator, not dropped from a bomber, but fired from a rocket, hitting the mountain at over 5 times the speed of sound. At those speeds, the sheer kinetic force of the impact is almost unimaginable. The weapon would liquefy rock on contact, vaporizing a path for the warhead following behind it. It wouldn't just be a bunker buster, it would be a bunker eraser. Then there are the more exotic and, frankly, more terrifying options. For years, the military has researched concepts like rods from God, which are basically massive tungsten telephone poles dropped from orbit. They would have no explosives at all, but would hit the ground with the force of a small nuclear weapon capable of penetrating hundreds of feet through solid rock. And that brings us to the final, unthinkable option, the nuclear one. The United States has the B-6112 nuclear bomb. It's unique because it's a dial-a-yield weapon, meaning its explosive power can be turned way down to as little as 300 tons of TNT equivalent. It also has a ground-penetrating case. The idea isn't to create a massive nuclear fireball, it's to detonate a very small nuclear charge deep underground. The explosion itself would be contained, but it would create a seismic shockwave so powerful it would be like triggering a localized man-made earthquake. The facility wouldn't be vaporized. It would collapse in on itself, crushed by the very mountain that was meant to protect it. Of course, using a nuclear weapon, even a small one, is a line that no one wants to cross. But the fact that these weapons exist and are being modernized tells you everything you need to know about how seriously this threat is being taken. This isn't a simple case of building a bigger bomb anymore. This is a high-stakes chess match being played with physics, engineering, and geopolitics. And for every move Iran makes by digging deeper, the US is forced to develop a countermove that is smarter, faster, and far more powerful. So what does all this mean for Iran's untouchable mountain fortress? It forces us to confront the true limits of conventional warfare. Current bunker busters just aren't enough for targets buried this deep. That's why we're seeing intense development in new weapons. Smarter penetrators, hypersonic missiles, even concepts like rods from God. And chillingly, the quiet modernization of small, Earth-penetrating nuclear weapons. This isn't just about bigger bombs. It's a high-stakes chess game played with physics and geology. For every layer of rock Iran adds, the counter-move becomes smarter, faster, and far more powerful. The idea of a truly untouchable base is being challenged like never before. The very ground meant to hide these secrets could ultimately be what gives them away. The future of this underground arms race and the weapons designed to crack the Earth itself is still unfolding. The truth, as always, is often buried deep. The upgraded F-22 Raptor is challenging global defense norms. With enhanced stealth, improved engines, and advanced sensor fusion, its air superiority is redefined. Critics warn these changes could trigger an arms race, while others argue it secures US dominance. Meanwhile, China and Russia are investing in next-generation fighter technologies to lead the innovation race. As Beijing and Moscow ramp up their modernization efforts, the critical question remains: can the F-22 maintain its supremacy, or will emerging platforms like the F-47 usher in a new era of aerial warfare? Join us as we uncover the cutting-edge upgrades of the F-22 Raptor, advancements so powerful they've captured China's attention. The F-22 Raptor is one of the most advanced fighter jets ever built, but it didn't start out that way. It began as part of the US Air Force's Advanced Tactical Fighter program in 1981. The goal was to replace the F-15 and F-16, which were powerful but becoming vulnerable to new Soviet threats. The Soviets were developing advanced missiles, airborne warning systems, and new fighters like the Su-27 and MiG-29, which could challenge U.S. air superiority. To stay ahead, the U.S. needed a fighter that was faster, stealthier, and more advanced. Engineers designed the ATF to dominate in a future war, using cutting-edge technology like lightweight materials, better flight controls, and engines that allowed supercruise. Sustained supersonic flight without using fuel-hungry afterburners. Most importantly, it had stealth capabilities, making it nearly invisible to enemy radar. After years of competition, Lockheed YF-22 won against Northrop's YF-23 in 1991. While the YF-23 was stealthier and faster, the YF-22 was more maneuverable thanks to its thrust vectoring engines, which allowed it to perform sharp turns and outmaneuver enemies in close combat. Lockheed's design also had fewer risks, making it the Air Force's top choice. Over the years, the F-22 has received multiple upgrades to keep it at the top of the game. Originally built for air-to-air combat, it has been enhanced to handle air-to-ground missions with precision bombs, making it more versatile. Its avionics have been upgraded, including better radar and sensor fusion, allowing pilots to detect and track threats even more effectively. One of the biggest improvements is its stealth maintenance. When the F-22 first entered service, its stealth coatings required a lot of upkeep, but new materials have made it more durable and easier to maintain. This means less downtime and more time in the air, ready for action. The F-22's weapon systems have also been enhanced. It now uses improved AIM-9X Sidewinder missiles for short-range dogfights and AIM-120D AMRAAM missiles for long-range engagements. Additionally, new software upgrades have given it the ability to communicate better with other aircraft, improving its role in networked warfare. While the Air Force stopped producing the F-22 after building 186 jets, it has continued to receive technological upgrades. Some of these improvements come from lessons learned during the development of the upcoming next-generation air dominance fighter, and they have enhanced the fighter jet's ability to detect, track, and eliminate threats before they even know it's there. These technological upgrades have significantly strengthened one of the F-22's most critical advantages, its radar and sensor systems. The jet's AN/APG-77 radar allows pilots to spot enemy aircraft from extreme distances while staying undetected. This radar uses active electronically scanned array technology, which improves tracking and targeting while reducing the chance of being detected by enemy systems. Combined with powerful jamming capabilities, the F-22 can disrupt enemy communications and radar, making it even harder to counter. The F-22 doesn't just rely on stealth, it's also armed with some of the deadliest air-to-air weapons in the world. The AIM-120 AMRAAM missile is its primary long-range weapon, designed to engage enemy aircraft before they get close. For close-range combat, the AIM-9X Sidewinder offers unmatched agility, allowing the Raptor to take down threats even during high-speed dogfights. Additionally, the F-22 carries an M61 Vulcan 20mm cannon, a 6-barrel rotary gun capable of firing 6,000 rounds per minute. This provides a powerful backup for situations where missiles aren't an option. Speed and agility are key to the F-22's dominance. Its thrust vectoring nozzles give it unmatched control in the air, allowing it to perform maneuvers no other fighter can match. Whether it's executing high G turns, rapid climbs, or sudden dives, the Raptor can outmaneuver opponents with ease. This ability is critical in dogfights, where the slightest advantage can mean the difference between victory and defeat. Former pilots often describe flying the F-22 as effortless, with its advanced flight controls making complex maneuvers feel smooth and precise. This agility ensures the Raptor can engage and disengage at will, giving its pilots complete control over the battlefield. While the F-22 is already a technological marvel, ongoing software and hardware upgrades will keep it ahead of emerging threats. The F-3R, that is, Form, Fit, Function, Refresh program, is enhancing the aircraft's avionics, increasing its processing power and sensor capabilities. These improvements will make the Raptor even deadlier, allowing it to integrate with next-generation systems and unmanned drones in future combat scenarios. The Air Force is also working on engine enhancements to boost efficiency and power, ensuring the Raptor remains capable of supersonic speeds without afterburners. These updates will extend the F-22's operational life, keeping it in service for years to come. Last year, Lockheed Martin successfully ran 6 flight tests to add new high-tech features to the stealth fighter. The U.S. Air Force relies heavily on its fleet of F-22s, and these upgrades will help keep the jet at the top of its game, possibly all the way into the 2040s. Some of the biggest improvements include a new infrared defensive system, advanced sensors, and special stealthy drop tanks that extend its range. At the 2025 Air and Space Forces Warfare Symposium, Lockheed Martin shared updates about these developments. Right now, the Air Force has about 180 F-22s, though 32 of them are older models used only for training and testing. Mike Shoemaker, a top executive at Lockheed Martin, emphasized the significance of the upgrades, stating that modern fighter jets must have enhanced vision, quicker threat detection, and extended strike capabilities. He mentioned that recent flight tests had concentrated on integrating advanced sensors to improve the F-22 Raptor's ability to track and engage targets from much greater distances, significantly boosting its combat advantage. While Lockheed Martin didn't share specific details about these sensors, the Air Force has been testing stealthy underwing pods on the F-22 for years. Many experts believe these pods house an advanced infrared search and track system, which would allow the Raptor to detect enemy aircraft without using radar, perfect for staying hidden while hunting down threats. Another major improvement coming to the F-22 is its next-generation infrared defensive system. Mike confirmed that Lockheed Martin is already under contract to integrate this technology, which will give the Raptor better missile warning capabilities in long-range detection. In simple terms, this means the jet will not only be better at spotting enemies, but also at avoiding surprise attacks. Lockheed Martin previously revealed that IRDS will use a distributed sensor system based on TACRS-T technology, first introduced in 2022. TACRS-T sensors provide a constant infrared view of the battlefield, helping pilots detect and track threats, even in complete darkness. So far, these sensors have only been fully integrated into F-5 advanced Tiger jets used by private military contractors. Now they're making their way to the world's most advanced stealth fighter. Mike's comments confirm that the F-22's new advanced sensor upgrade is different from the infrared search and track distributed system. This suggests that the Raptor may get even more advanced infrared tracking capabilities. Adding an extra infrared sensor pod alongside IRDS makes sense. Traditional IRST systems, whether built into jets or carried as external pods, typically use large, swiveling sensors to track targets from different angles. TAC-IRST, the system being developed for the F-22, works differently. In 2017, Ken Merchant, a Lockheed Martin executive for the F-22 program, explained that there wasn't enough space inside the jet to install a full IRST system like the F-35's Electro-Optical Targeting System, or EOTS. EOTS mainly helps with air-to-ground targeting, but it also has infrared tracking capabilities. Even on its own, IRDS would be a huge improvement over the F-22's current ANAAR-56 missile launch detector, which only provides basic infrared warnings. TASI IRST sensors spread across the aircraft could help the Raptor detect threats more effectively, similar to how the F-35 distributed aperture system works. Using both built-in and podded IRST sensors together would be a game changer. As experts have explained, traditional IRST sensors can only detect a target's direction and movement, but struggle to determine its exact range. However, if two aircraft with IRST systems share data, they can quickly triangulate a target's position with precision. Lockheed Martin has already demonstrated this kind of teamwork using its Legion pod, which features an IRST-21 sensor. This system can provide high-quality targeting data and has been tested on various fighter jets. The F-22 was originally supposed to have an IRST system, but budget cuts removed it late in development. Now, with stealth technology becoming more common worldwide, the U.S. military sees infrared tracking as crucial. Unlike radar, which actively sends out signals that enemies can detect, IRST works passively. It simply listens for heat signatures, making it perfect for tracking stealth aircraft. IRST can also help radar systems lock onto targets more effectively. providing better accuracy without revealing the jet's position. One of the biggest advantages of IRST is that it's immune to electronic warfare. Modern enemy forces use jamming technology to disrupt radars, but infrared tracking can't be blocked in the same way. This makes IRST a powerful tool for detecting and tracking stealthy threats. Mike reassured that any new F-22 upgrades would maintain the aircraft's stealth capabilities. This is crucial as the U.S. faces increasing threats from advanced enemy aircraft and stealthy weapons. China, for example, recently unveiled 2 new stealth fighter designs, signaling rapid advancements in their air combat technology. He also emphasized the importance of detecting threats from greater distances in modern air combat. He explained that if an aircraft could sense and see farther, it would also be able to share that information with other units. The F-22 Raptor had already proven itself as one of the most advanced fighters, acting as a central coordinator for larger aerial teams. Mike noted that it could gather intelligence, guide other aircraft, and ensure air superiority. Lockheed Martin, alongside the U.S. Air Force and industry partners, had been working to enhance the Raptor's communication and networking abilities to further improve its role in battle. According to Lockheed Martin, the F-22 was the first combat aircraft to fully utilize an open mission systems architecture, which allowed for faster and easier software upgrades. This feature made the aircraft highly adaptable to new technologies. A major software update known as Release 4 was in its final testing phase. If everything proceeded as planned, the update would be available for the entire F-22 fleet by the end of the spring. He also pointed out that this upgrade would make it easier to integrate third-party applications into the aircraft's mission systems, enhancing its capabilities even further. When discussing the timeline for the Raptor's new sensor capabilities, Mike mentioned that they were expected to be delivered to the fleet within the next few years. In the meantime, he highlighted that the F-22 remained in high demand. It was also revealed that Lockheed Martin had been supporting increased operations and deployments despite the relatively small size of the F-22 fleet. He acknowledged the challenges of maintaining a fleet that had accumulated over 500,000 flying hours, but reassured that the aircraft would not require major structural upgrades to continue serving well into the 2040s. The long-term future of the F-22, however, remained tied to the Air Force's next-generation air dominance program. Originally designed to replace the Raptor, NGAD had undergone a detailed review the previous year. It was suggested that the analysis appeared to favor continuing the program as planned, although concerns about affordability persisted. Developing a next-generation fighter required significant funding, which had to be balanced with other military priorities, such as stealth refueling tankers and AI-powered drone wingmen, known as collaborative combat aircraft. Additionally, rising costs in the Sentinel intercontinental ballistic missile program had forced the Air Force to reassess its budget. Shoemaker also mentioned that discussions were still ongoing regarding the optimal size of the B-21 Raider stealth bomber fleet. Meanwhile, the Department of Defense was facing potential budget cuts to existing programs in order to redirect resources toward new priorities, including the Golden Dome missile defense system. Despite these uncertainties, Lockheed Martin remained confident in the F-22's continued importance. It was indicated that the aircraft's upgrades were already contributing to NGAD research, ensuring its relevance in modern air combat. However, as the U.S. Air Force moves forward with the next generation of fighters, a major shift is underway. The recent unveiling of the F-47, the Air Force's newest jet, marks a significant leap beyond the F-22, offering superior range, stealth, and cost-effectiveness. Air Force Chief of Staff General David W. Alvin, who spoke at a high-profile event alongside former President Donald Trump, revealed new details about this once-secret aircraft. Alvin reportedly stated that, despite claims from adversaries, the F-47 would be the first crewed sixth-generation fighter in the world. His comments were seen as a response to China, which had recently unveiled its own stealth aircraft. He explained that the F-47 would join the B-21 Raider stealth bomber in the Air Force's new fleet and would be equipped with advanced stealth technology, next-generation sensors, and long-range attack capabilities. These features, he noted, would make the aircraft highly effective in contested battle zones. Although the Air Force did not reveal all details about the F-47, the concept images released showed notable design differences compared to previous fifth-generation fighters like the F-22 and F-35. Observers noted that while the F-47 had a traditional, stealthy nose and bubble canopy, it also included forward canards and sharply angled wings, features not commonly associated with stealth aircraft. Alvin reportedly emphasized that the F-47 would have a significantly longer range than the F-22. The existing F-22 could fly more than 1,850 miles with external fuel tanks before needing to refuel, but the F-47 was expected to exceed that distance considerably. Discussions within the Air Force had suggested the possibility of producing two variants of the aircraft, one larger version designed for long-range missions, particularly in the Pacific, and another smaller version optimized for shorter-range operations in Europe. According to the Air Force, the F-47 represents a major leap forward and had been designed with a modular system that would allow it to be upgraded over time. Officials expressed confidence that this approach would ensure the aircraft remained effective for decades. Alvin further explained that for the past 5 years, the Air Force had been testing NGAD technologies using experimental X-planes. These test aircraft had flown hundreds of hours, helping engineers refine advanced systems and accelerate the development process. He stated that this extensive testing had allowed them to push the limits of technology and bring the fighter into service more quickly than previous programs. He also reportedly expressed confidence that the F-47 would be operational within former President Trump's administration, which would last until January 2029. Comparisons were made to the F-22, which took 6 years to progress from selection in 1991 to its first production flight. It was also noted that references to NGAD test flights had surfaced as early as 2020. However, former Air Force Secretary Frank Kendall had later revealed that prototype flights had likely taken place even earlier, possibly in the mid-2010s. One of the biggest issues with the F-22 was its cost. While the basic construction of each jet cost around $140 million, once research, development, and other expenses were included, the price soared to about $350 million per aircraft. Now, with the Next Generation Air Dominance program, the Air Force plans to field between 220 and 250 advanced fighters. The F-47, a product of this effort, is expected to be a game-changer. Unlike older stealth aircraft, which required extensive maintenance to keep their radar-evading surfaces intact, the F-47 will feature a more durable design, reducing downtime and making it combat-ready more often. This design philosophy follows lessons learned from the new B-21 Raider bomber, which was built to fly frequently without excessive maintenance. The F-47 is also built for adaptability. Thanks to digital engineering and an open systems approach, its software, sensors, and mission equipment can be upgraded quickly and easily. It will also need fewer crew members and ground support to operate, making it more flexible in real-world missions. Boeing won the contract to develop the F-47, which will now enter its engineering and testing phase. Initially, a small number of test aircraft will be produced, with options for further production later. Boeing stated that this fighter will continue its legacy of building some of the most famous aircraft in U.S. history, including the P-51 Mustang, F-15 Eagle, and F/A-18 Hornet. The decision to select Boeing over Lockheed Martin was surprising to some. Boeing has faced issues with several military projects, such as the KC-46 tanker and T-7 trainer, resulting in significant cost overruns. Meanwhile, Lockheed, the maker of the F-22 and F-35, has struggled with delays in upgrading the F-35's technology and managing its high maintenance costs. However, the Air Force has not publicly shared the reasons behind its choice. Despite the debates surrounding the selection process, the Air Force remains focused on ensuring air superiority. The next generation fighter is expected to dominate the skies, keeping the U.S. ahead of threats for decades. Meanwhile, the F-22 will remain a key part of the USF's fleet, benefiting from upgrades until its eventual replacement by the Boeing F-47, ensuring continued air superiority well into the future. A $35,000 drone has changed the course of modern warfare in ways few anticipated. Iran spent years developing a weapon that struck fear across the Middle East, affordable, relentless, and deployed in overwhelming numbers. Then the United States executed an unprecedented strategy. It captured the very same drone, rebuilt it, stamped it, made in America, and turned it against its creators. How can a nation's own weapon be used against it? And what does this mean for the future of war? Join us as we reveal how the United States just cloned Iran's most feared drone and how it changes everything. For years, the United States military operated with one unspoken assumption, that raw technological superiority would always be enough. The idea that a drone costing roughly the same as a used car could challenge that dominance seemed almost laughable. America had stealth fighters that cost over $100 million each. It had cruise missiles that could thread a window from 1,000 miles away. It had aircraft carriers that projected power across entire oceans. The notion that a cheap, propeller-driven flying bomb could threaten any of that seemed almost absurd. Then came the Shahed. Iran's Shahed 136 is not an impressive machine on paper. It is a delta-winged, propeller-driven drone with a small warhead and no pilot. It does not evade radar with cutting-edge stealth coatings. It does not fire back when attacked. It flies relatively slowly at low altitude, guided by GPS coordinates to a pre-programmed target. And when it arrives, it explodes. That is the entire concept. There is no recovery. There is no second mission. The drone is the weapon, and the weapon is expendable. And yet this relatively unsophisticated drone did something that billion-dollar weapon systems could not. It broke the economics of modern air defense. And once it broke them, nothing in the calculus of modern warfare was ever quite the same again. To understand why the Shahed was so strategically disruptive, you have to understand how air defense economics work. Every air defense system operates on a basic principle. The cost of intercepting an incoming threat must be justified by the value of what you are protecting. For most of military history, that equation made sense. Incoming missiles and aircraft were expensive to build and operate, so spending $1 million to shoot one down was rational. The attacker was losing something valuable every time they fired. The defender was spending money, but so was the attacker. The Shahed shattered that logic completely. When Russia began deploying Iranian-supplied Shahed drones against Ukraine in massive numbers, Western defense analysts watched in quiet horror. Not because the drones were destroying targets with pinpoint precision, but because of what it was costing to stop them. Ukraine and its allies were firing Patriot interceptors worth over $1 million each to destroy drones that cost somewhere between $20,000 and $50,000 to build. The attacker was spending a fraction of what the defender was spending. Every single engagement was a financial victory for Iran and Russia, regardless of whether the drone hit its target or not. The Shahed did not need to be accurate. It needed to be plentiful. And it was. Thousands of them were produced, deployed, and launched, attacking from multiple directions simultaneously. They flew at night to complicate visual detection. They flew low to complicate radar detection. They forced defenders to make impossible choices at every engagement. Exhaust your interceptor stockpile or let them through and accept the damage. Either way, the attacker benefits. This was the strategic lesson that shook every major military on Earth. The United States military studied this lesson very carefully. Defense analysts wrote about it. Think tanks published reports on it. The War Zone, one of the most respected military publications in the country, had been arguing for years that America needed to be building tens of thousands of Shahed clones immediately. The logic was simple and uncomfortable. If this strategy works against us and our allies, we need to be able to use it too. And we need to be able to use it at scale. And then America did exactly that. The low-cost, uncrewed combat attack system, known as Lucas, is the American answer to the Shahed 136. And the connection between the two is not subtle or theoretical. It is direct, deliberate, and openly acknowledged. American officials have described the process without apology. The United States captured one of Iran's Shahed drones, extracted its internal components, sent them back to engineers in the United States, rebuilt the system from the ground up using American manufacturing and American technology, added significant upgrades, and then deployed it against the very country that designed the original. CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper put it in terms that left no room for interpretation. He told reporters that the United States captured the Iranian drone, pulled the guts out, sent it back to America, put a Made in America stamp on it, brought it back, and started shooting it at the Iranians. That is not a paraphrase. That is the admiral in charge of the entire Iran campaign, describing the program with remarkable candor at a press conference in Tampa, Florida. The drones are manufactured by SpectreWorks, a company based in Phoenix, Arizona. Each unit costs approximately $35,000. A Tomahawk cruise missile costs between $2 million and $2.5 million per shot. An air-launched cruise missile currently in service costs over $1 million. For the price of a single Tomahawk, the United States can now field over 50 Lucas drones. But Lucas is not simply a cheaper version of America's existing weapons. It represents a fundamentally different philosophy about what a weapon is supposed to be and how it is supposed to be used. Traditional American military doctrine has always been built around the principle of preservation. The entire procurement culture of the American military is built around the idea that each platform is a precious, irreplaceable asset. Lucas, however, inverts that logic entirely. These drones are designed from the start to be expended. They are not supposed to come back. The goal is to produce them so quickly and so cheaply that losing one in combat is strategically irrelevant. Defense planners call this concept attritable systems, platforms that are deliberately designed and accepted to be used up in combat. It is a radical departure from how the United States has approached weapons procurement for generations, and it reflects a hard-won recognition that in a conflict against an adversary willing to absorb enormous losses, the ability to match volume matters as much as the ability to field superior technology. The upgrades that America added on top of the Iranian original make Lucas significantly more capable than the weapon it was modeled after. The differences are not cosmetic, they are operationally transformative. Where the Shahed 136 flies a fixed GPS route to a pre-programmed coordinate and strikes whatever happens to be there when it arrives, Lucas operates in an entirely different tactical dimension. Multiple Lucas drones can communicate with each other while airborne. They can share sensor data, coordinate their approach vectors, and adjust their targeting based on what other units in the swarm are detecting in real time. This is autonomous cooperative behavior among multiple drones executing a shared mission. Some units in the fleet are equipped with Starlink satellite terminals, giving them beyond line-of-sight connectivity that allows targeting information to be updated while the drone is already in flight toward its objective. A Lucas drone can be launched, fly for hundreds of miles, receive updated coordinates mid-mission, and redirect itself to a new target without any human physically controlling it from moment to moment. The human remains in the loop in terms of authorizing the mission and approving the target list, but the execution is autonomous. The original Shahed was a blunt instrument designed for volume. The American version is a precision instrument that also happens to be available in volume. Lucas drones can be launched from multiple platforms, catapult systems on the ground, vehicle-mounted mobile launchers, and critically, from ships at sea. They were test-launched from the Independence-class littoral combat ship USS Santa Barbara in the Persian Gulf before they ever saw combat. That naval launch capability is strategically significant. It means Lucas is not dependent on fixed airstrips that can be targeted and destroyed. It can be deployed from almost anywhere across a vast operating area, which makes the launch infrastructure itself extraordinarily difficult to suppress. CENTCOM established Task Force Scorpion Strike in December of 2025, following directives from War Secretary Pete Hegseth to accelerate the acquisition and deployment of cost-effective drone technology. It was the first squadron in American military history dedicated entirely to one-way attack drones. The mission was straightforward: provide affordable, rapidly deployable offensive drone capability to commanders in the Middle East as quickly as possible. The first combat use of Lucas came during Operation Epic Fury, the joint United States and Israeli military campaign targeting Iranian assets that began in early March of 2026. Task Force Scorpion Strike used Lucas drones in the opening salvos of the campaign. They were fired at unspecified Iranian targets on the first day and used repeatedly in the days that followed. For the first time in history, American forces were using mass-produced, low-cost kamikaze drones in sustained combat operations, the same category of weapon that had been exclusively associated with Iran and Russia just years before. When asked directly how effective Lucas had been in combat and how much it was helping preserve the stockpile of more expensive munitions, Admiral Cooper gave a two-word assessment: indispensable. That single word from the commander of United States Central Command is worth dwelling on, meaning the campaign as conducted could not have been executed in the same way without it. When asked what kinds of targets Lucas had been used against, Cooper's answer was equally economical: good ones. The strategic impact of Lucas extends well beyond any individual strike or any single campaign. For years, one of the most serious concerns animating American military planning around a potential conflict with Iran was the question of magazine depth. Iran possesses thousands of drones and missiles. Producing enough expensive cruise missiles and interceptors to match that volume was economically and industrially unsustainable over a prolonged conflict. The fear was that Iranian barrages would outlast American and Allied stockpiles, forcing a choice between accepting devastating strikes or escalating beyond what the political situation could bear. Lucas has directly addressed that fear. Iran's response to all of this was as revealing as it was predictable. Rather than acknowledging that the United States had studied their approach and built a superior version of their own weapon, Iranian military officials pivoted to accusation. The spokesperson for Iran's Khatam al-Anbiya central headquarters publicly charged that America and Israel had copied the Shahed design and were deploying Lucas drones specifically to frame Iran for drone attacks across the region that they themselves were carrying out. The allegation was elaborate. Lucas was not a weapon aimed at Iran, but an impersonation designed to make Tehran look responsible for strikes it had nothing to do with. Consider what that accusation actually reveals beneath the political theater. Iran built a drone so effective, so distinctive in its design, and so thoroughly associated with Iranian military operations across the Middle East that when America built a near-identical version, Iran's instinct was not to acknowledge the imitation. Their instinct was to claim that America was using the similarity to commit fraud. That response tells you everything about how central the Shahed had become to Iran's sense of its own military identity. And it tells you everything about how completely Lucas had disrupted that identity. Somewhere over the Persian Gulf, an Iranian radar operator stares at a screen showing something that shouldn't exist. A contact moving faster than anything in their threat library, crossing their airspace at an altitude where the air is so thin it barely qualifies as atmosphere. They try to hold it. The track slips. They try again, and then it's gone. Out of range, out of reach, mission complete on the other end. They never got a lock. This is what happens when you point a missile system at an aircraft that operates outside the physics those systems were built around. Iran's air defense network is one of the most layered in the Middle East, and it still couldn't answer the problem. We're going to break down exactly why, what the SR-72 actually is, how Iran's defenses work, what went wrong during the encounter, and why the result was settled before the aircraft ever crossed the coastline. Most people hear SR-72 and think faster SR-71. That's the wrong mental model entirely. The SR-71 Blackbird was built around the idea of going fast enough that nothing could catch it. Mach 3 plus, high altitude, get in and get out. It worked for decades. But the SR-72 isn't an evolution of that concept. It's a different concept altogether. The thinking behind it is that speed itself becomes a weapon, not just a survival mechanism. There's a gap between those two ideas that matters more than it sounds. Lockheed's Skunk Works, the same team behind the U-2, the SR-71, and the F-117, developed the SR-72 around a propulsion system that doesn't exist anywhere else in operational aviation. It's a combined cycle engine, which means it runs as a conventional turbine at lower speeds and transitions to scramjet propulsion as it accelerates through the hypersonic regime. A scramjet has no moving parts and combusts fuel using air compressed purely by the vehicle's own velocity. Below a certain speed, it produces nothing. But past roughly Mach 4, it takes over and pushes the aircraft toward Mach 6, around 4,500 miles per hour at altitude. That number sounds abstract until you think about what it means for anyone trying to shoot the aircraft down. A surface-to-air missile doesn't fly at your target. It flies at where your target is going to be. The fire control system calculates a point in space, The missile heads for that point, and if the prediction is accurate, you get an intercept. That calculation depends on having enough time to run the math and enough track data to make the prediction reliable. At Mach 6, the SR-72 crosses a typical radar engagement zone in seconds. The fire control system has almost no data to work with, the prediction window collapses, and the intercept solution never solidifies. Speed at this level also works against detection in ways that aren't obvious. The aircraft runs hot. Hypersonic friction heats the airframe to extreme temperatures. But it also operates at altitudes near the top of the stratosphere, where most ground-based radar systems aren't optimized to look. The geometry of radar coverage has a ceiling, and the SR-72 operates close to it. That means the radar picture is already degraded before you factor in any low observable design features the aircraft carries. Now, the fair question the audience always asks, is the SR-72 actually operational, or is this still a program? The honest answer is that it lives in a gray zone. Lockheed has confirmed the program exists. The U.S. Air Force has referenced hypersonic reconnaissance capabilities without naming the platform. Operational deployment details are classified. That ambiguity isn't accidental. The uncertainty about where the aircraft is and what it can do is itself part of the deterrent. An adversary who doesn't know whether you're overhead right now has to behave as if you might be. Every air defense system flying today was designed before hypersonic cruise platforms became real. The SR-72 is the first aircraft that makes those systems structurally obsolete. So that's the machine. Now you need to understand what it was flying into. Iran didn't build its air defense network overnight, and it didn't build it cheap. What exists today is one of the most layered systems in the Middle East, assembled over decades from a mix of Russian hardware, domestically engineered platforms, and a command structure that ties them together across the country's most sensitive airspace, including the Gulf. The centerpiece of the Russian-supplied portion is the S-300. This isn't a simple radar-guided missile battery. The S-300 was engineered specifically to engage fast, high-altitude threats. Ballistic missiles, fast jets, low observable aircraft. It operates across multiple frequency bands, can track dozens of targets simultaneously, and was built with the assumption that any serious adversary would try to jam or spoof its guidance. Iran received its first operational S-300 systems in 2016 after a lengthy embargo and has spent years integrating them into a unified command network with overlapping coverage zones. On paper, it's a serious capability. Then there's the Bavar 373. Iran developed this platform domestically, positioning it as their answer to the U.S. Patriot system. Iranian military officials have claimed it can engage stealth aircraft and fast-moving cruise missiles. Independent verification of those claims is essentially impossible, but the engineering effort behind it is real, and the system has gone through multiple public test cycles. Whether it performs at its claimed ceiling in a contested environment against a real hypersonic target is a different question entirely. Beyond the missiles themselves, Iran runs an early warning radar network covering the Gulf approaches. Radar stations positioned across the southwestern coast and on islands in the Gulf give operators significant coverage of the maritime approaches, the same routes U.S. reconnaissance assets use regularly. Iranian operators have tracked American drones, monitored Israeli aircraft transiting the region, and logged cruise missile trajectories from multiple conflicts in the area. This is not a green crew running unfamiliar equipment. The people watching those screens have real operational experience. So why wasn't any of it enough? Air defense doesn't fail at one point, it fails across a chain. Detection, tracking, lock-on, and intercept are 4 separate steps, and every single one has to succeed for a missile to leave the rail with a valid solution. Miss any step or run out of time between them, and the sequence collapses. The S-300 and the Bavar 373 were both designed with threat models in mind. Specific speed ranges, altitude bands, and radar return profiles that their engineers used to tune the systems. Those threat models reflected real adversaries at the time of design. Mach 6 wasn't in the calculation, because nothing flying at Mach 6 existed when these systems were being built. That's not a criticism of Iranian engineers. It's a problem every air defense program in the world shares. Now put that system up against the SR-72, and here's where the encounter gets interesting. By 2026, the Persian Gulf region had been running hot for months. Strikes, counterstrikes, maritime incidents, and proxy activity across multiple fronts had pushed U.S. reconnaissance operations into a higher tempo. Knowing what's happening inside Iran's military infrastructure, where assets are moving, what's being activated, what's being concealed, carries enormous operational value when you're managing that kind of environment. The SR-72 went in to get that picture. Iranian early warning radar picked up the contact somewhere over the Gulf. What the operators saw didn't match anything in their reference library. The return was intermittent, appearing, dropping out, reappearing, and the velocity reading was beyond the scale of conventional fast movers they'd seen before. Not a cruise missile, which would track predictably and slowly enough to solve. Not a conventional aircraft. Something else moving through their coverage zone at a speed that gave the system almost no time to build a track. Here's what that looks like from the operator's side. When a radar contact appears, the fire control system starts building a track, logging successive positions to calculate heading, speed, and predicted future location. That prediction is what guides the missile. The more track data you have, the more accurate the prediction. Against a Mach 6 target crossing a radar engagement zone, you might get 1 or 2 position updates before the aircraft is already past the point where any intercept geometry is viable. The fire control computer needs time to solve the problem. At that speed, time is the one thing the system doesn't have. Iranian operators attempted to establish a fire control lock. The radar couldn't hold the track consistently enough to hand off a valid firing solution to the missile system. The contact was intermittent because the SR-72's radar cross-section is reduced, not invisible, but small enough that a high-speed target with a weak return becomes extremely difficult to track continuously. Stack that on top of the altitude factor, which puts the aircraft near or above the optimal engagement ceiling for ground-based systems, and the intercept problem goes from difficult to geometrically unsolvable. No missile left the rail, not because someone made a political decision to stand down, but because the conditions for a valid shot never materialized. The SR-72 completed its reconnaissance run, collected what it came for, and exited the area. What remained in Iranian radar logs was a contact that had appeared, refused to cooperate with any of the systems pointed at it, and disappeared before anyone could do anything about it. That's what happened. Here's why it was always going to go that way. The SR-71 flew operational missions for more than 2 decades without a single aircraft lost to enemy fire. Not once. Adversaries launched missiles at it. North Korea, North Vietnam, Libya, and none of them connected. The reason wasn't that those missiles lacked the range or the altitude. Some of them did have both. The reason was that by the time a launch was authorized, the Blackbird had already moved far enough that the intercept geometry had fallen apart. Human decision-making takes time. Radar operators have to confirm the contact. A commander has to authorize weapons release. The missile has to be brought to readiness. That chain, even when it runs fast, takes longer than a Mach 3+ aircraft needs to exit the danger zone. The SR-72 runs at twice that speed. The decision chain doesn't get faster just because the target does. So what was already a narrow window for the SR-71 becomes, against the SR-72, essentially theoretical. You'd need to predict where the aircraft is going to be, authorize a shot, and launch, all before the target has moved so far that your solution is worthless. In practice, that sequence can't complete in time against a Mach 6 platform with a reduced radar return at high altitude. This is what the phrase "speed as a weapon" actually describes. It's not about surviving a missile that gets launched at you. It's about making sure the launch never happens, because the conditions for a valid shot never exist long enough for anyone to pull the trigger. The threat neutralizes itself through physics before it ever becomes a real danger. The geopolitical dimension of that is deliberate. When the U.S. can send a reconnaissance platform into contested airspace, collect what it needs, and exit before any adversary finishes the engagement sequence, it changes the calculation for every country operating air defenses in the region. You can't deter something you can't stop, And you can't negotiate around a capability gap you don't know how to close. Iran's air defense operators did what they were trained to do. The equipment responded the way it was designed to respond. The failure wasn't human, it was structural. Built into every assumption those systems were engineered around, years before the SR-72 existed. Speed at hypersonic levels doesn't just beat interceptors, it beats the people operating them, because humans can't compress their decision cycle fast enough to matter. Iran's attempt to lock on wasn't reckless, it was just physics working against them in every direction at once. No upgrade to the S-300 or the Bavar 373 closes that gap without solving a problem that no air defense program in the world has answered yet. Subscribe if you want more breakdowns like this, and drop a comment. What do you think Iran's next move looks like?